Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the massive recent breakout of Enliven Therapeutics, ticker symbol ELVN. If you've been tracking the biotech sector lately, you've definitely seen this name lighting up the scanners. We're going to break down the clinical science, the market dynamics, and the raw data that literally has Wall Street paying very close attention.
Now, the catalyst here is super fascinating. We recently saw a sudden, aggressive 11.78% intraday jump. And what makes this so interesting is that we're talking about a development stage biotech company. They have zero commercial revenue right now. So when a stock like that pops with this kind of volume, it usually means the market is reacting to a major de-risking event. Let's look at exactly what that event was.
To understand all the hype, here's our agenda. We'll look at the ELVN stock surge, what ELVN 001 actually is, dive into the Phase 1 data, assess Enliven's financial health, and finally map out the road to Phase 3.
Starting with Section 1, the ELVN stock surge, focusing on the catalyst and market momentum.
The really crucial takeaway here is that this was not just some random hype spike or a short-lived meme rally. Instead, what we saw was a news-backed, orderly breakout. We're talking steady higher lows and controlled pullbacks, completely avoiding that wild blow-off top you sometimes see. Plus, there was high trading volume with actual momentum follow-through. What we're witnessing is a fundamental shift in how the market perceives Enliven. They're transitioning from a story stock where people just buy into a cool concept to a company that's showing real, tangible clinical execution.
Moving to Section 2, what exactly is ELVN-001 and how does it target chronic myeloid leukemia or CML?
ELVN-001 is what's known as a tyrosine kinase inhibitor, or TKI. Basically, it's a highly selective, potentially best-in-class small molecule inhibitor designed to specifically target the BCR/ABL1 gene fusion. To put that in plain English, that gene fusion is the primary oncogenic driver. It's the root cause for patients living with chronic myeloid leukemia. And ELVN-001's mechanism is complementary to existing treatments, meaning it can tackle mutations that currently make other drugs totally ineffective. It's a really smart approach.
And that brings us to the ultimate goal of this drug, achieving a major molecular response, or MMR. This is a massive, critical treatment milestone. It essentially indicates a highly measurable reduction of that cancer-causing gene in the patient's blood. For patients whose cancer has relapsed, become refractory, or who just can't tolerate other available treatments, hitting that MMR is the absolute gold standard of efficacy.
So let's look at Section 3, the Phase 1 data. This is the real why behind the massive stock move.
Before we even look at the results, you really need to understand just how heavily pretreated and sick this patient population actually is. Just look at these numbers from the ENABLE trial. Out of the 161 enrolled patients, a staggering 70% had already cycled through 3 or more prior TKI therapies. 23% had been through 5 or more, and over 60% had prior exposure to a drug called asciminib. Basically, these patients have exhausted almost all of their current options. So the positive efficacy results we're about to look at, they hit so much harder when you realize how exceptionally difficult this disease is to treat at this late stage.
Okay, let's dive right into the data. We're looking at the MMR response rates by 24 weeks. And right across the board, the 80 milligram once-daily dose cohort totally outperformed the overall Phase 1b group. The 80 milligram group hit an impressive 61% overall MMR, compared to 54% overall. But here is the absolute most striking takeaway. For the patients who achieved MMR, 100% of them maintained it. Literally 100%. That shows deep, truly durable responses in a population that, historically, just stops responding to therapy altogether. It's really incredible stuff. And that 80 milligram data, that was the magic number. It was the absolute key to unlocking FDA alignment. Enliven took this exact data to their end of Phase 1 meeting, and they secured regulatory agreement that 80 milligrams, taken once daily, is the optimal, safe, and recommended dose for their upcoming pivotal Phase 3 trials. For investors, getting this kind of regulatory clarity removes a huge cloud of uncertainty.
This clinical success isn't just numbers on a page either. It's being heavily underscored by the medical community. Dr. Dennis Kim from the Princess Margaret Cancer Center highlighted during the European Hematology Association Congress that the drug's safety profile is incredibly clean, which perfectly reflects its high selectivity. He noted that the responses are deeply meaningful for patients who are essentially out of current options.
When key opinion leaders come out and validate the data like this, you better believe the broader market takes notice.
Moving on to Section 4, Enliven's financial health and the duality of biotech risk.
This perfectly captures the classic biotech duality. On the one hand, they are burning a lot of cash, nearly $21 million a quarter just on research and development. They have zero product revenue and negative earnings. But hey, that's completely standard for a company at this stage. But on the flip side, look at that war chest. They're sitting on over $450 million in cash, cash equivalents, and marketable investments.
So how did they build that massive war chest? Well, to fuel their pipeline and fund those crucial Phase 3 trials, they successfully pulled off an upsized stock offering, raising roughly $400 million. Now, sure, that does cause some dilution for existing shareholders, but if you're a trader or an institutional investor, this move completely wipes out any near-term funding risk. They aren't running on fumes. They have the serious capital needed to actually execute their clinical vision.
Which brings us to Section 5, the road to Phase 3, and what's next for ELVN.
The roadmap is crystal clear, and more importantly, it's regulator-blessed. Following the recent Phase 1 data and FDA alignment, the next big milestone is a planned end-of-Phase 2 FDA meeting in Q3 of this year. That feeds directly into the initiation of the pivotal Phase 3 Enable-2 trial, set for the second half of 2026. And because of that upsized offering we just talked about, their projected cash runway now extends all the way into the first half of 2029. They have years of financial breathing room to hit these critical clinical milestones.
Naturally, Wall Street analysts have rapidly updated their models to reflect this massive de-risking. Firms like Stifel initiated coverage with a buy rating and a $60 price target, pointing out that the drug is super well positioned in the CML landscape. Mizuho also boosted its target from $45 all the way up to $62. The broader street consensus is sitting firmly in buy territory right now, which suggests there's still significant upside potential from current trading levels, assuming clinical execution continues smoothly.
Now, of course, the binary risk of biotech is always going to be there. Trials can fail, and adverse events can pop up out of nowhere. But with cash secured all the way through 2029 and a pivotal Phase 3 trial looming on the horizon, you really have to wonder, how is the chronic myeloid leukemia landscape going to change if Enliven Therapeutics keeps executing this perfectly? Will ELVN-001 officially become the definitive new standard of care for these heavily pre-treated patients? We'll be keeping a very close eye on their upcoming clinical readouts to find out. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.